posters on your walls.
We did not even realize that things were going to get that worse.
Every day I hear stories about these older people in their 70s and 80s dying like flies every day because of heat strokes. They just couldn't take the changing climate. They just couldn't adapt to it.
I don't think so. We were politically that much of aware, of what's going on.
One objective was to make it a 100% Islamic state. There's no question they wanted to do that, which meant driving out every non-Muslim from the valley, especially the core of the valley, Srinagar and major areas.
मस्जिदों में as far as I'm concerned, रास्ते में चलते हुए मस्जिद थे, मैंने कभी ध्यान ही नहीं दिया, हमने कभी सोचा नहीं इस तरफ कि वहाँ कुछ ऐसा हो रहा है. पर जो 19 जनवरी को हुआ तो लगा कि ये सब जगह तो चल रहा था ये.
What they have been through in the valley, many of us are not even aware of it.
In 1986, there were riots against Hindus in Anantnag, that's a South Kashmir town, just because people thought that there were some Muslims who were killed in Jammu.
You didn't have an option. My parents, they didn't have an option. हम कहाँ जाते?
As we always say that history repeats itself and we should learn from history.
We would never want to pick up, any argument or anything, with anyone,
Even if everybody left in 1990, people were forced to sell property over the next 10 years or so. It was almost a racket of how brokers from Kashmir would come and tell you to come and sell your property at throwaway prices.
Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas, and the world is moving at its own pace, but the suffering and the agony of those days when Kashmiri Pandits experienced all that which anyone would wish none is subjected to face. And in this series, as we speak to Kashmiri Pandits, things are changing, yet are they changing fast enough? Will they ever find the same Kashmir welcoming them? I have with me today Arun Moza ji, who is not only from Kashmir, he also is someone who has sincerely studied all about Kashmir, and we are thankful to you, Arunji, for joining us to this series, and I would request you to share your personal experiences, but just to give a backdrop of where Kashmir is in terms of its historical perspective, what can you tell our viewers?
Thank you, Ashok ji, for having me on this show. From historical perspective, Kashmir was a very important part of India, always has been, as an educational center. Right, most of the Sanskrit literature which came for India actually came from Kashmir, because a lot of the Pandits, all the educationists would come to Kashmir from all over the different parts of Kashmir. But let's skip that back history, but let's stick to 1947 when India as a country was formed. And state of Jammu Kashmir actually decided not to join either India and Pakistan, which was asked by the British government at that time. However, state of Jammu Kashmir did sign a standstill agreement with Pakistan that they would not violate each other's boundaries. However, Pakistan, after 2 months or 3 months, attacked Jammu and Kashmir. And that is when the Maharaja Hari Singh signed the instrument of accession with India. And Indian forces landed there and pushed back the Pakistani armed forces. However, there's one important aspect of that attack from Pakistan is that the territory which is held by Pakistan, Mirpur, Kotli, Muzaffarabad and Gilgit-Baltistan, every native Kashmiri has been killed by them. During that raid, they wiped out everybody who was a native Kashmiri. Right? There are historical evidences, historical facts about that. Even till Baramulla, they were successful in killing everybody who was a native Kashmiri. So that is the historical context of 47. And then what happened after that was there was a systematic ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri culture and Kashmiri native people who are the Kashmiri Hindus, or what we know as Kashmiri Pandits.
I just feel it is important for us to learn, in independent India, was there any communication between Kashmiris and central government, and was Article 370 a huge wall that the pains and sufferings and the day-to-day problems of Kashmiris were not addressed, or center could not address and even attend to them?
I think that is a very important point you bring up. So, just to give some context, is that in 1954 and 55, the Constitution of State of Jammu and Kashmir was formed. It was outside the Constitution of India, right? This only happened because of Article 370, which gave the state of Jammu and Kashmir a little bit more powers, and the Parliament of India could not interfere with that. What it enabled is that if a Kashmiri Hindu was not selected for a job or an engineering college or a medical college, they had no way to challenge it. The answer for them was like, तुम्हारे लिए तो पूरा भारत पड़ा है, तुम्हें यहाँ पे क्या करना है? Right? The other part was like, which everybody's complaining, hey, the militancy started because of rigged elections. You could not go to, Chunav Ayog. You could not file a complaint in Supreme Court because the law did not allow you to do that, right? So there was a wall, and there was a wall. The democratic principles of Indian Constitution did not apply to state of Jammu and Kashmir. And the other biggest flaw, which every Kashmiri should know and should be aware of, the Constitution of State of Jammu and Kashmir selected Urdu as their official language, not Kashmiri, not Dogri. Where did Urdu come from? State of Jammu and Kashmir. So that is the biggest, violation of a native culture and native people of state of Jammu and Kashmir. So of course, 370 and 35A have been significantly and seriously discriminatory towards the minorities of state of Jammu and Kashmir.
And as while abrogation of Article 370 and 35A, Home Minister Amit Shah ji mentioned in the Parliament that the policies of central government and the laws which were pro-women or with human approach and development oriented were not being implemented in Jammu and Kashmir. Was it very much felt by a common Kashmiri?
Yeah, definitely. You will talk to a lot of Kashmiri women here, and you'll get an example. If a Kashmiri woman decided to marry somebody outside state of Jammu and Kashmir, she lost the right to vote, lost the right to inherit property. Her kids lost the right to property, right to government jobs, scholarships. So of course it was felt by day-to-day Kashmiris. And then of course the refugees from Pakistan, which came after 47, were not given the state subject status under 35A. They could not apply for government jobs. They could not get scholarships. They had to stay what they were as refugees. So it was felt by everybody who was not part of this political elite or whoever were driving the laws actually in state of Jammu and Kashmir.
So now you talked about ethnic cleansing and Urdu being the language which was preferred in Jammu and Kashmir. In contrast to the philosophy of Hinduism having its roots in Kashmir, and so gradually it was being painted as a predominantly Muslim state. Whereas if you look at few centuries ago, things were not like that.
Yeah, I think for every Kashmiri and every Indian, it is important to know that the Kashmir word has not been distorted throughout history. So the first mention of Kashmir, you're going to see it in actually Nilmat Puran, which is a conversation between one of the descendants of Yudhishthir and Arjun, and one of the rishis who was Rishi Janmejay, who was actually a disciple of Ved Vyas, who wrote Mahabharata, right? So Islam actually made it into Kashmir very late compared to India. See, in India, it started getting swept by 1600, 600, 700s. Whole Pakistan, Afghanistan got eradicated, and Iran. But Islam made it into Kashmir in 1339, and in that 1339 till like 1700s, they wiped out majority of the people and the culture of that. You're right. The fabric of India is that you are in a state, you can teach the native language. You go to Tamil Nadu, you can teach Tamil. You go to Punjab, you can teach Punjabi. Instead of Jammu and Kashmir, you can teach Urdu. So it's a disgrace actually for the people of Kashmir who are claiming to be Kashmiris but don't know what their fundamental rights are.
And let's revisit that period. Which is still has a lot of blood flowing, a lot of pain and suffering, and a sense of helplessness, which made exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. So how all that started, if you or any of your family members experienced those days there first person? Yeah,
I think, I was 89, I was probably 12 years old at that time. However, we moved from Jammu to Srinagar, Kashmir in 1986. And it did start actually then. It was always there. It was just happening slowly. But in '89, what happened? It happened at a major scale, which had never happened before. Probably what had happened during Aurangzeb's time or Sikandar Butshikan's time. So the discrimination, the violation, the threats were always there. So I was there in '86, and we were 7.5 kilometers from Srinagar in a village called Humahama. And we had two sets of neighbors, right? And very few of our close-by neighbors, which you are dealing with, all Muslims. And we have one of our cousins' house in front of us, and there was the rest of the Humama, right? Not so tolerant, not so okay with us being there. So since '86, I think, to our house, there has been stone pelting every month. The stone pelting is not new. It's happening to armed forces, but our house was used to this, especially if we had guests over, if we had weddings over. There will be a bunch of kids who will be stone pelters there. This was a very normal situation. Then another incident I'll give you, like my dad was traveling and me, mom, and my sister were alone. Suddenly a group of probably 100 of men came to our house and said, hey, the property you have here is actually owned by the state and we are going to make a park here. There was no reason for them to come there. The Patwari could have come or the district magistrate could have come. It was just intimidation, right? However, my mother, being my mom, she was very strong and she kind of repulsed them away. And then what ended up happening, we ended up building a wall around our house. It was our property. The property in front of us was cousins. The side was somebody else. It was known. But the intimidation was always there. My school bus stop was like 0.5 kilometer from our house. As I told you, I had like two sets of neighbors. So I need to see like 100 meters, we leave all the good neighbors out. And then there's a huge walk with the other neighbor. It was a threatening walk every day. There's already somebody would intimidate me. They will threaten us with curse words. So this was always there. But '89, what happened is there was a mandate which happened from ISI, Pakistan, to cleanse, ethnically kill, or move everybody out of Kashmir.
Arunji, I know these were horrible days and they have left such impressions which would never probably go away 100%. But I, as a child, while you were experiencing stone pelting at your home and this intimidation on the streets on your way to school, how you managed to maintain the spirit which would keep you focused on your studies and the bravery of your mother, as you shared, psychologically for a child when somebody is throwing stones at the home and guests are here, how was all that experienced?
I think it was pretty bad. I'll give you another example. So I think initially when me and my sister moved there, it was horrible because we had never faced something like this, right? Being kids is different, but just being intimidated every day was very different, from an entire village. And then, initially it was frustrating. We were scared, and then, we gathered some strength. There have been occasions where I may have thrown a stone back, or my sister was barely, she's 2 years younger than me. We were hardly enough grown up to do anything like that. It was traumatic. I still remember we had a wedding of our cousins in our home, and we went from Humahama to Langate, where we had to get our sister-in-law. The stone pelters were everywhere. Even in her village, we were followed by kids who were throwing stones at us. So it was not just our one isolated incident, it was everywhere. So it was traumatic for everybody, and everybody ignored it, thinking they were kids and they're kids. And these kids are now on the streets throwing stones at armed forces. So.
How was the policy at various families, including yours, that how to address it? Was there any place where you could have complained for them, or how to deal with this kind of situation? Were there some discussions, if you remember?
So I think the kids pelting stone was mainly brushed off because they were like, they are from the village, leave them alone. And, however, when those 100 or so men and boys came to our house, my dad made a point to make a statement. So he went to the village, and there was no police. There was a panchayat was called up, and this was discussed that this was our property. And The guy who was there did not have any right. And there were other people from the village who are on side because they had helped us build the house and they knew about the property. So the road to justice at that time was panchayat, and which was held. And my dad realized the only way he could secure his house and his brother's properties or our joint family's property was to build a wall around it. We didn't have to build a wall, but we were forced to build a wall. So that was the way. But did it last long? Probably not. I don't think it lasted that long in there.
So your family moved to Jammu in '86, and some family members remained there, or you were talking about '89. What are the specific memories of the events of '89 which you heard or you saw?
Yeah, so we moved out of Kashmir actually in April '89. So my dad moved to Jaipur. So we just got lucky. He sensed whatever, but we had cousins who were left there. Slowly, most of our family started leaving, October, November, December '89, and there was only one cousin who was left there between the two houses. And one day in 1990, he was picked up by some of the locals, and we used to call it a wooder, which was like a small hillock. In everybody, we're in Humama, there's a hillock and call it wooder. And they took him, and my cousin luckily survived. And he asked them, "What do you guys want from me?" He said, "We want Azadi." He said, "You say Allahu Akbar, I say Har Har Mahadev, and we'll both get Azadi." So he escaped that day. But then somebody from the village came overnight and told him they have orders to kill you unless you leave. So he finally left. He had a job, and he had sent his family, my sister-in-law and kids were all in Jammu. So there have been like thousands of examples like that. This is like up close and personal, which happened to our cousins, Every family has thousands of stories like that.
So Arunji, I was in Rajasthan at that time, Jodhpur, and I don't remember our media reported it that well. Most of the Indians were not even aware that these are the atrocities or these are the hardships faced by a common Kashmiri.
See, I have no idea what government of India's mindset was at that time, right? We became refugees in our own country, and government of India called us migrants. We didn't come to celebrate a festival or do a picnic there. People left their houses and lived in tents for like 30 years, and still people living in refugee camps. And at that time, the only few media outlets were probably Doordarshan at that time, I think. And I have no idea. I think there are some videos definitely you can find, or some coverage, but not a lot. I think it was a huge shameful event for India. I think it still is. And I think they were just trying to hide it at that time, unfortunately.
And then Kashmiris became a refugee in their own country, Kashmiri Pandits, I must say. And governments kept on talking about taking care of them. And I think things didn't improve much. Now, when this abrogation of Article 370 happened, there is a lot of hue and cry, Allah Gullah, across the world in some countries, especially our neighboring country, Pakistan, and wherever Muslim are who wants to support Kashmir, coming up with narration that Indian government is not being fair to Muslims in that part. How do you feel in contrast to all that had happened? They were complaining that for 30-40 days they didn't have internet, and that was being made as a very big issue, or no cell phone, bad thing. And what I'm just hearing from you, it's kind of shocking.
So I think that there are few. Everything has to be backed by historical fact, right? So before this, when the terrorist Burhan Wani was killed by Indian Armed Forces, there was a statewide shutdown called by a separatist, and there was a 6-month curfew in Kashmir. Nothing happened. 6 months curfew. People survived, right? And then everybody's talking about the consequence, not about the cause, right? So the cause is that there was terrorism there, and there is terrorism there. So Indian Army is not there by choice. Indian Army was forced to go there. There are, historically have been only 2 occasions when Indian Army moved to Kashmir, state of in Jammu and Kashmir. One in 47 when Pakistan attacked and state of Jammu and Kashmir chose to become part of India. Second in 89 when it was uncontrollable for the local government missionary to save its own citizens. Right, the state government could not save its own citizens, so the Indian Army had to be called to protect the citizens. Right, so everybody who's crying foul have to look at historical facts. Like, if a place is infested with terrorists, and to protect common life or common value, you have to call your last line of defense. That is the army actually of that country.
So as we move towards concluding part of our conversation today, in terms of your hope, expectations, and the potential impact of the abrogation of Article 370, do you look at it as some major positive development from the point of view of addressing the concerns of Kashmiri Pandits, or you see there's a long way to go?
I think there are a few things I want to address to this. The one is, I'm going to give you a name, Sikandar Butchakan and Aurangzeb, which everybody knows about. If a foreign ruler comes and wipes you out, you still can relate to it. However, when your neighbor conspires you to kill you, take over your houses, your businesses, kill your family, you cannot reconcile with that. Right? So a changing of political framework is not going to help with that mindset, right? That's one. So for Kashmiri Hindus, if your neighbor was part of murdering your family, how do you reconcile with that? That's number one. Number two is that, how do you change the mindset of all these terrorists who have been brainwashed? So a government policy is not going to help you. Government is also going to give you direction, but the people have to change from the ground up, right? So I think it's a long battle. I think it's a positive thing for state of Jammu Kashmir and Ladakh. And the last important point is that state of Jammu Kashmir is huge, right? There are three major sections. There's Jammu section, Kashmir, and Ladakh. And Kashmir is probably the tiniest part of that whole state, area-wise. And that is where the problem. And not entire Kashmir. There are only few districts which have issues, right? So from that perspective, I'm very hopeful. I think hopefully with education and awareness, the mindset of people change. Kids who come to the United States to study, they read real history. And then I definitely see a way forward for progress for people.
Thank you very much, Arunji. And this series where we are touching Tears of the Valley, these conversations help us understand all that has happened, and we get an idea of putting everything in a proper perspective. We will have more conversation in this series, and probably we'll try to bring Arun Moza ji back to this program. But where I would like to conclude is whether we are sharing these stories sitting here in America or wherever it was, the idea is to connect with that current of oneness, where we not only celebrate through newspapers, we get an idea with up and close inside view about all that has happened, and we are not aware, which is a part of our shared history, I would say, or part of our flow, our family. And I thank you very much for being kind enough to share. Thank you.
It seemed like that's it. Our life is done. हमें नहीं पता जलाएंगे, मारेंगे, butcher करेंगे, जो भी करेंगे. But again, we did not think कि हमें निकलना है यहाँ से.
I don't blame anybody for that, but there was no recognition, of course. There was no understanding of what really happened.
Our parents educated us to be inclusive, to be peace-loving, and not to be argumentative. My father-in-law started getting letters, flyers, letters, phone calls that you are on the hit list and you have to move out.
I mean, they essentially declared that Nizam-e-Mustafa or whatever, and that this is we want to be an independent country, and you could see that coming. And maybe some other people told you about this. We used to get PTV in Kashmir, and PTV at that point, Pakistan television, was very popular because you used to have American shows back then, which Doordarshan did not. You could see the venom and the poison they were pouring into Kashmir through PTV at that point of time. They would have these shows which were designed to instigate Kashmiris, and they would have this really poisonous propaganda. And I mean, just seeing that, you would feel that fear. I mean, I'm a Hindu, I'm watching this, and my neighbors Muslims watching this. I mean, if I was a Muslim, I would be very angry right now just watching this TV. And they were pouring that into Kashmir. I cannot believe why government of India would let that happen at that time. Why didn't block PTV go into Kashmir? But it was openly happening. Combination of basically what you would imagine a jihadi camp mein training hoti hai. That was taped on a video cassette and distributed to all the houses, and they would be distributed among all the Muslims among each other.
उसमें ये बोला था कि आप जॉब छोड़ के चले जाएं यहाँ से, और नहीं तो आपका घर जलाएंगे, आपकी बेटी को ले जाएंगे.
Letting it be publicized of what happened in Kashmir would make it harder for people to claim to be secular.
I see kids who are 6 or 7 years old throwing stones and they don't even know why they're throwing stones.